Your daughter can celebrate in the basement. My sister snapped after she stole my kid's rooftop birthday dinner for her son's championship party and dumped our cake order on the wrong floor. My daughter cried in the elevator. I wiped her face, picked up my phone, and 20 seconds later, my sister stopped smiling mid-toast. My name is Nathan. I'm 34. I'm a general contractor, which means I build things for a living and apparently also for my family, who have spent the last decade treating my generosity like a subscription service they forgot to cancel. I have a daughter named Mila. She just turned 10. And this is the story of how my sister Jocelyn stole her birthday, used her decorations as set dressing, spent her deposit on champagne, and then told me the basement was fine because, and I quote, "It's not like she'll remember." Mila remembered. Let me tell you about the evening of June 14th. Mila had been counting down to this birthday for 43 days. I know because she made a paper chain. 43 loops of construction paper, taped together with the kind of commitment only a 9-year-old approaching double digits can sustain. She tore one off every morning before school, stuck them to the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a cactus that we bought at a gas station in New Mexico 2 summers ago. The cactus magnet is important. Not yet, but it will be. She wanted a rooftop dinner, not a bouncy castle, not a pizza party. A rooftop dinner at a restaurant called Bellamy's, 14 floors up, with a view of the skyline and string lights, and the kind of cloth napkins that make a 10-year-old feel like she's in a movie. She'd seen it on my phone when I was scrolling through a contractor's portfolio. She pointed at the rooftop and said, "That's where I want my birthday, Dad." She said it the way kids say things when they're not asking. I booked it 6 weeks in advance. Private dining for 15 guests. 3-tier vanilla cake with hand-painted butterflies from a bakery on Elm Street. $340, which is an absurd amount of money for a cake, but Mila picked the design herself, sat at the bakery counter with the decorator for 20 minutes choosing colors, and I watched her face while she did it. And that face was worth $340 and probably more. Total deposit for the venue, $2,800. That covered the space, the setup, the service staff, and a sound system I didn't need, but the package included. I need to tell you about Bellamy's, because it matters. 2 years before this birthday, my company renovated the lobby and 2 restaurant floors of the building Bellamy's occupies. Total contract, $89,000. 14 weeks of work. My crew and I did it on time, under budget, and without a single complaint from the tenants. The building owner, Ray Maddox, is the kind of guy who wears reading glasses on a chain around his neck and calls everyone brother regardless of whether he knows them. He shook my hand on the last day of the job and said, "You ever need anything in this building, you call me directly. Not the front desk. Me." He gave me his personal cell number. I saved it and never used it. Until June 14th. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The paper chain was down to 0. June 14th. Mila woke up and tore the last loop off the refrigerator, held it over her head like a trophy, and said, "It's butterfly cake day." She was wearing a dress she'd picked out at Target 3 weeks earlier, purple with silver stitching, because purple and silver were the party colors, and she wanted to match her own decorations. She'd planned this. In her mind, this birthday was a production, and she was the director, the star, and the audience. I was her stage crew. Gladly. We left the house at 4:30 p.m. The party started at 6. I wanted to get there early, check the setup, make sure the cake had arrived, do the things a father does when his daughter has been tearing paper loops off a chain for 6 weeks, and he can't afford to get this wrong. We pulled into the parking garage at 4:52. The building has a glass elevator on the outside, the kind that lets you see the city as you go up. Mila pressed the button for 14. She always presses the button. It's her job. She pressed it and looked at me and said, "Can we sit by the edge so I can see the buildings when the lights come on?" I said, "Already requested it." She smiled. The kind of smile where the whole face participates. I remember that smile because of what replaced it 40 minutes later. We stepped off on 14. The rooftop entrance has double glass doors. Through the glass, I could see banners. Not birthday banners. Championship banners. Blue and gold. A trophy on a table. Framed team photos. And my sister Jocelyn, standing near the railing in a dress I'd never seen, directing a waiter carrying a champagne bucket. Mila saw the banners before I processed them. She said, "Those aren't mine." No, they weren't. I opened the doors. The rooftop was fully set up for a party. Not Mila's party. A championship celebration for my nephew Caleb, Jocelyn's 12-year-old son, whose regional soccer team had won a tournament the previous weekend. 40 guests, blue and gold tablecloths, a banner that read Champion Caleb, and behind it, partially hidden, partially visible, a purple and silver sign that said Happy 10th Birthday Mila, being used as a backdrop filler behind the trophy display. My daughter's birthday decorations, custom ordered, her name in glitter, were serving as set dressing for my sister's party. I need to tell you about Jocelyn before I tell you what happened next, because you need to understand the machine before you see the product. Jocelyn is 31. She has always occupied the exact center of every room she enters, not because she's loud, but because she arranges the room around herself the way some people arrange furniture. She doesn't push. She redirects. She's been redirecting my family's attention for as long as I can remember, and I've been letting her, which is a sentence I've said to a therapist named Dr. Keller who has a fern in her office that is clearly dying and neither of us mentions it. And I'll say it to you now because it's true and it costs me nothing to admit it. But Jocelyn wasn't always this. I need to be honest about that. When I was 16 and our dad had his first heart scare, a minor thing, a flutter they called it, which is a word that makes cardiac events sound like butterflies and shouldn't be allowed, Jocelyn drove me to the hospital in our mother's Camry. She was 13, couldn't legally drive, didn't care. She drove 25 minutes in the dark, both hands on the wheel, knuckles white, parked in a loading zone, and held my hand in the waiting room for 2 hours. When the doctor came out and said Phil was fine, she looked at me and said, "See, we're okay. We're always okay." She meant it. At 13, she meant it completely. That version of my sister exists somewhere under the one who stole a 10-year-old's birthday for a champagne toast. I keep those two versions in my head at the same time, and neither one cancels the other out. The birthdays. I need to walk you through these because they're not accidents. They're a pattern so clean you could plot it on a graph, and I know this because my cousin Trish, who has a conscience, a long memory, and the kind of phone storage that suggests she's never deleted a screenshot in her life, kept records. When Mila turned 5, Jocelyn accidentally double-booked a family brunch on the same day. Half the guests went to Jocelyn's event. She claimed she didn't check the calendar. The calendar was a shared Google Calendar. She had checked it. Trish had the notification receipt. When Mila turned 6, Jocelyn showed up 2 hours late and announced her pregnancy in the middle of the cake cutting. Every family member stopped singing happy birthday to crowd around an ultrasound photo on Jocelyn's phone. My mother cried. My father hugged Jocelyn. Mila blew out her candles alone. I have a photo of it. She's the only person looking at the cake. Everyone else is looking at a phone screen. That photo is still on my phone. I look at it sometimes the way people look at scars they should have gotten stitches for but didn't. When Mila turned 7, Jocelyn scheduled Caleb's baptism for the same Saturday, pulled the entire family to a church 40 minutes away. When Mila turned 8, Jocelyn told half the family the party was canceled when it wasn't. 6 people showed up instead of 20. Mila counted the empty chairs. She didn't say anything about it. She just counted them. Quietly. The way you count something when you already know the answer, but you need the number to make it real. 5 years. Every single birthday. 5 years of texts Trish saved. 5 years of, "Oh, I didn't realize. And these things happen. And she's young. She won't remember." I told Dr. Keller about this during a session where I was supposed to be talking about my divorce. She looked at the dying fern, looked at me, and said, "Nathan, the pattern isn't your sister's. The pattern is yours. You keep setting the table and expecting a different guest." I didn't say anything for about 30 seconds. Then I asked if the fern needed water. She said, "Probably. But it's not your fern. The divorce. I should mention it because it connects. My ex-wife, Claire, left 2 years ago. Several reasons. But one of them, the one she circled back to during the mediation like a dog returning to a bone it's already buried and dug up 3 times, was, "You let your family walk over you, and I can't watch it anymore." She wasn't wrong. She was cruel about it. And she chose a bad time to be right about something. But she wasn't wrong. Jocelyn had spent years telling Claire that I was too passive and lets people take advantage. Claire started believing the narration. Then she started living in it. After the divorce, Jocelyn told the whole family it was my fault for not being enough, which is a fun thing to hear from the person who helped create the conditions she's diagnosing. Mila is the thing that came out of the divorce intact. She's the reason I built a business, bought a house, learned to braid hair from YouTube tutorials at midnight, and booked a rooftop 6 weeks in advance. She's the reason I care about butterflies on a cake. Because when your kid picks out butterfly designs at a bakery counter and her face does the thing where the whole world gets quiet except for her, you will pay $340 for a cake. You will pay anything. Mila remembered every stolen birthday. She just stopped expecting them to go right. Back to the rooftop. June 14th, 5:04 p.m. I found the restaurant manager, Dana, a woman with short hair and a lanyard who looked like she'd been dreading this conversation. I asked her where my daughter's birthday setup was. She said there had been a modification to the reservation. I asked who modified it. She said a voicemail came in 4 days earlier from someone identifying herself as my assistant, requesting the birthday party be moved to the basement banquet room and the rooftop reassigned to a championship celebration under the same account. For days, Jocelyn had called the restaurant 4 days before the birthday, impersonated my assistant, and redirected the entire event. She'd rehearsed a professional voice, left a detailed voicemail, moved the rooftop to herself, moved my daughter to the basement, and used my $2,800 deposit as the base payment. When I asked Dana to show me the financials, $1,200 of my deposit had been applied to Jocelyn's champagne and catering upgrade. My daughter's birthday money paid for my sister's toast. I said, "Where's the cake?" Dana's face did something I recognized from my contracting work. The expression a subcontractor makes when they know a pipe is going to burst and they're standing underneath it. She said, "Follow me." The cake was in a service hallway near the basement kitchen, sitting on a metal cart between a mop bucket and a stack of folded tablecloths. 3 tiers. Hand-painted butterflies. $340. One tier was dented where someone had shoved it through a service door that was too narrow. The bakery's delivery receipt, taped to the cart, showed the redirect was requested by phone 1 hour before the party. Jocelyn had called the bakery too. I picked up the cake, carried it myself, set it on a table in the basement. The basement was windowless, low-ceilinged, fluorescent lit, and had the ambience of a file storage room that someone had hastily dressed with a tablecloth. The birthday decorations weren't there. They were upstairs behind a trophy. The table was set for 15. 4 people were sitting at it. Mila's friends. 4 out of 15. The other 11 had been redirected. Jocelyn had called my guest list and told them the party was moved to the rooftop and was now a combined celebration. They were upstairs drinking champagne and assuming this was a joint event. My daughter's guests were at my sister's party thinking they were at my daughter's party. Mila walked into the basement, looked at the 4 people, counted them. She does that. She's been counting empty chairs at her own birthdays since she was 8. She looked at the table set for 15 and said, "Where is everyone?" I said, "They're coming." She knew I was lying. 10-year-olds know. They don't say it, but they know. We took the elevator down because I needed a minute and because the stairwell smelled like paint thinner, which I know because I painted that stairwell 2 years ago, and apparently the building maintenance team has been doing touch-ups with the cheapest primer available, which as a contractor offends me on a professional level, but that's a different conversation. The elevator smelled like old carpet and whatever cleaning product they use between floors, something floral that doesn't quite cover the metallic smell of the cables. Mila stood in the corner. She was holding a napkin over her face. Purple napkin from the table upstairs. She didn't want me to see her crying. She was turning 10 and she was hiding her face in a napkin in an elevator because the adults in her life decided she wasn't worth a rooftop. I crouched down, took the napkin, wiped her face. Her mascara, which she'd put on herself for the first time because it was her birthday and she wanted to feel grown up, was running in 2 thin lines down her cheeks. She'd watched a YouTube tutorial for that mascara 3 times. Practiced on me first, which is how I ended up at a job site with slightly enhanced eyelashes on a Wednesday, and my foreman asked if I was trying something new, and I said yes and didn't elaborate. I wiped the mascara lines too. She held still like she was at the doctor's office. Patient, waiting for someone to tell her what happens next. I said, "We're going to fix this." She nodded. Didn't ask how. Didn't ask when. Just nodded. Because when you're 10 and your dad says he's going to fix something, you believe him. That trust is the most expensive thing I've ever been given. More than the house. More than the business. More than $2,800 on a rooftop. That nod costs everything if I don't deliver. I stood up, took out my phone, scrolled to a contact I'd saved 2 years ago and never used. Ray Maddox. The man whose building I renovated. The man who told me to call him directly if I ever needed anything. 2 years. I never called. Because I don't ask for things. Because asking for things is what my family does, and I've spent my whole life being the person they ask, not the person who asks, and crossing that line felt like admitting I was one of them. Dr. Keller would have something to say about that. The Fern would probably agree. 20 seconds. That's all it took. Ray, it's Nathan. I'm at Bellamy's. Someone changed my daughter's birthday reservation without my authorization. She's 10. She's crying in an elevator. I need the rooftop back. Ray didn't ask who changed it. Didn't ask for details. Didn't ask why I was calling the building owner instead of the restaurant manager. He said 3 words. Give me 2. He hung up. I stood in the elevator with my daughter. The doors were closed. Neither of us pressed a button. We just stood there. 60 seconds. 90. The elevator hummed. The glass wall showed the parking garage, gray concrete, fluorescent strips. Mila was looking at the floor numbers above the door like she was counting something again. She always counts. I wonder sometimes if that's her version of praying. Just counting things until the world makes sense. Then my phone buzzed. Text from Ray. Done. Go up. 2 words. No punctuation. The kind of text a man sends when he owns the building and doesn't need to explain himself. We went up. The rooftop. 5:38 p.m. The restaurant manager Dana was already talking to Jocelyn. Not asking. Telling. The private dining reservation was being restored to the original booking party. Jocelyn's championship event was being relocated to the basement banquet room. Jocelyn was mid-toast. Champagne glass raised. 40 people watching. She was saying, to my son, who showed everyone what this family is capable of when we believe in each other. And she was on the word each when Dana stepped to her side and leaned in. The smile didn't drop immediately. It took about 4 seconds. The glass stayed up for 2 of them. Then it came down. Slowly. The way you lower something when you realize the room has shifted and you're the last person to know. She looked at me. I was standing in the doorway with Mila. Mila was still holding the napkin. Jocelyn said, Nathan, this is ridiculous. I didn't respond. I was looking at my daughter's birthday sign behind the trophy display. Mila walked past me toward it. She looked at the sign. Her name in purple glitter. Being used as a backdrop for a 12-year-old's soccer trophy. She turned to me and said, They used my sign, Daddy. Quiet. Not angry. Confused. Like she was trying to understand why someone would use her name as decoration for someone else's party. I took the sign down. Handed it to Dana. Said, Put this where it belongs. My parents were at the rooftop. I need you to understand that. Diane and Phil weren't at the basement with their granddaughter. They were upstairs at the championship party, seated at a table with champagne in their hands. They'd been there since before I arrived. They'd helped set up. They brought the trophy, the banners, the framed team photo. They physically carried the decorations that replaced their granddaughter's birthday. My mother was wearing earrings I'd bought her for Christmas, which is the kind of detail that shouldn't matter but does. The way a paper cut shouldn't hurt as much as it does, but it's in exactly the wrong spot. When the rooftop was being restored, my mother came to me. She didn't look embarrassed. She looked inconvenienced, like someone whose flight had been delayed and she wanted to speak to a manager. She said, Nathan, this is unnecessary. Jocelyn worked hard to put this together for Caleb. I said, Jocelyn used my deposit. She said, it's family money. Family money. I paid it. From my account. My name on the reservation. My card charged $2,800. But it's family money. That phrase does a lot of heavy lifting in families like mine. It means, yours when you earn it, ours when we need it, and nobody's when it's time to take accountability. Part of me wanted to explain the math. Part of me wanted to show her the voicemail, the impersonation, the deposit transfer. And a small part of me, the part one try not to listen to, wanted her to just once look at Mila and see what I see. Not a girl. Not a granddaughter. Not a category of child that doesn't need rooftops. Just Mila. The kid who made a paper chain and tore one loop off every morning for 43 days. I don't think my mother has ever counted to 43 for anything that wasn't a recipe. During the relocation chaos, Caleb found me in the hallway. 12 years old. Wearing a jersey 2 sizes too big. The kind parents buy so kids can grow into it, which is parenting optimism in textile form. He said, Uncle Nathan, I didn't know this was Mila's party. Mom said the restaurant gave us the rooftop because of the championship. I'm sorry. He was genuine. Embarrassed. His ears were red. He kept pulling at the hem of the jersey like he wanted to disappear inside it. I put my hand on his shoulder. Not your fault, buddy. But his face, the moment he understood what his mother had done to his cousin's birthday, I won't forget it. That's the face of a kid recalculating every good thing his parent ever told him. Kids shouldn't have to carry that. But they do. They carry it and they don't put it down because there's nowhere to set it. The rooftop was restored by 6:15. Dana's team worked fast. Mila's decorations went back up. The cake, dented tier and all, was placed on the center table. The butterfly with the bent wing became Mila's favorite. She said it looked like it had been on an adventure. That's verbatim. It looks like it's been on an adventure, Dad. Sometimes your kid says something that rewires your chest, and you just nod because speaking would ruin it. The 11 redirected guests came back down from the championship party that was now in the basement, confused, apologetic. Several of them had no idea there had been a switch. One mom said, "Jocelyn told me it was a combined event." Another said, "I thought you planned this together." Nobody planned anything together. One person planned to steal, and the rest of us showed up to different versions of the same lie. After the party, after the candles and the butterflies and the slightly dented cake that tasted fine, after Mila fell asleep in the car on the drive home, with frosting on her chin and one butterfly candle still clutched in her fist like a tiny purple torch, I sat at my kitchen table and opened my phone. I should mention that during the party, while 15 guests were singing happy birthday on a rooftop that smelled like string lights in summer and $340 worth of vanilla buttercream, I made a full pot of coffee. At a restaurant, with a kitchen that serves coffee, I made my own. In the staff break room, because Dana said I looked like I needed to do something with my hands that wasn't punching drywall, and she wasn't wrong, and I appreciated the honesty. The coffee was terrible. I drank 2 cups. The group chat. My mother had accidentally added me to it 3 days before the birthday. I'd missed the notification because I get approximately 47 notifications a day from subcontractors who can't read blueprints and clients who think rush job means free job. And a family group chat doesn't exactly rise to the top of that pile. I scrolled up now. 3 days of messages. Jocelyn, Diane, Phil. Planning the venue switch. Diane's message. He won't make a scene in front of Mila. Just tell him it's a small change. Phil's message. Tell the restaurant it's a family decision. And Jocelyn's message. The one that will live in my phone until the day I die. The basement is fine for a kid's party. It's not like she'll remember. 3 adults. 3 days of coordination. About a 10-year-old's birthday. I called my mother the next morning. Didn't yell. Asked one question. Why did you help her do this? Diane went quiet. Then she said something I've been carrying around since. Turning it over like a stone you found in your shoe that's too sharp to ignore and too small to justify stopping for. She said, because Caleb is the only grandson who carries the family name. Mila is a girl. Girls' birthdays don't need to be a production. She said it plainly. Not with cruelty. With the kind of certainty that comes from believing something so long you've forgotten it's a belief and started treating it as weather. Something that just is. Boys get rooftops. Girls get basements. That's not a decision. That's gravity. I didn't argue. I hung up, sat on the edge of my bed with my work boots still on, and didn't notice the mud on the sheets until the next morning. Phil called separately that night. He'd been drinking. I could hear the glass on the counter between sentences. He said, "Your mother and your sister planned this." I told them not to. They didn't listen. They never listened to me. I asked why he didn't warn me. He said, "Because the last time I disagreed with your mother about Jocelyn, she didn't speak to me for 3 weeks. I'm 64, Nathan. I don't have the energy for silence anymore." He hung up. It wasn't an apology. It was a confession from a man who chose comfort over his granddaughter every time the choice was offered, and the choice was offered a lot. Phil is 64 years old, and he has made peace with being the least important person in every room his wife occupies. And some people would call that love, and some people would call that surrender, and I think both words describe the same posture from different angles. The aftermath moved fast, because it always does when someone pulls the wrong thread. Jocelyn posted a Facebook essay 2 days after the birthday. Long paragraph about family members who choose ego over celebration, and how my son's once-in-a-lifetime achievement was diminished by pettiness and pride. She used words like heartbroken and disrespected, and all I wanted was to celebrate my child, which is a sentence that works beautifully as long as you remove the part where she stole someone else's venue, deposit, cake, guest list, and decorations to do it. 40-something comments. Mostly sympathetic. Her friends, her network, people who only know the version of the story she uploaded, which is the highlight reel version where she's the devoted mother and I'm the villain who ruined his celebration. Then Trish commented, "My cousin, the intelligence agency with a conscience." She didn't write a paragraph. She didn't argue. She posted 3 screenshots. The group chat. Diane's "he won't make a scene" message. Phil's "tell the restaurant it's a family decision." And Jocelyn's masterpiece. "The basement is fine for a kid's party. It's not like she'll remember." 3 screenshots. No commentary. No caption. Just the receipts, laid out like exhibits in a courtroom run by the internet. Comment section turned in real time. Supportive comments went quiet. New comments arrived like a tide change. "Wait, she moved a 10-year-old's birthday party to a basement. You spent her deposit on champagne? Did you seriously write she won't remember?" One comment simply said, "Girl, what?" Which, in terms of internet brevity and devastation, is hard to beat. Then Bonnie commented. Bonnie is the championship team's parent coordinator. She has a profile picture of herself at a bake sale and the energy of a woman who has organized 17 car washes and will organize 17 more and will remember every receipt. She wrote, "Just to clarify, the official team celebration was held at Coach Rivera's house on Saturday afternoon. This rooftop event was not a team-organized function and was not endorsed by the league. The party Jocelyn threw, the one she stole a birthday for, wasn't even an official championship celebration. She organized it independently, inflated its importance, presented it as a team obligation. It was a vanity project wearing a jersey." Bonnie's comment got more likes than the original post. The internet doesn't forget. It just moves the evidence to a different floor, like a birthday cake next to a mop bucket. And here's the part that made me close the app and stare at the ceiling for a while. I looked up the championship game stats on the league website. Caleb played 4 minutes. Total. 4 minutes of game time in a championship match. He went in during the second half when the team was already up by 3 goals and the coach was rotating the bench. The team won. Caleb watched most of it from a folding chair on the sideline. Jocelyn built a rooftop party, stolen from a 10-year-old's birthday deposit, to celebrate 4 minutes of playing time. For context, it takes longer than 4 minutes to parallel park my truck, and nobody's ever thrown me a rooftop party for that. Though I've been told my parallel parking is exceptional. I also learned, through Trish, who at this point was functioning as my personal intelligence agency with better screenshots than the CIA, that Jocelyn couldn't have booked her own venue if she'd wanted to. Her husband lost his job 3 months ago. They were 2 months behind on rent. The championship party was funded entirely by redirecting my $2,800 deposit, borrowing our parents' credit card for the catering extras, and a $200 cash bribe she gave to Dana, the restaurant manager, to smooth the reservation change. The $200 came from returning the birthday gift she'd originally bought for Mila. She returned her niece's present to fund the bribe to steal her niece's party. I want you to read that sentence again because I had to read it 3 times before I believed Trish wasn't making it up. Jocelyn deleted the post within 2 hours. Screenshots were already in 4 group chats by then. A week later, the restaurant sent Jocelyn a bill. My $2,800 deposit was restored to my account, which I confirmed at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday while eating cereal in my underwear, which is when most financial victories happen in my experience. But Jocelyn's championship party had incurred $3,400 in charges. Champagne upgrade $890, premium catering $1,200, overtime staff $680, cleanup $630 for a confetti cannon someone brought that went off near the string lights and required a maintenance crew. She had no deposit to cover any of it because my money was returned. Her credit card declined. The restaurant sent a collections notice. She called me, asked me to split the bill since it was a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. She impersonated my assistant on a recorded voicemail, redirected a $340 cake to a service hallway, spent $1,200 of my deposit on champagne, redirected my guest list, used my daughter's decorations as backdrop props, and told me the basement was fine. Misunderstanding. I said nothing. I hung up. There was a satisfaction in the silence that I'm not proud of, but I'm not going to pretend wasn't there. Ray reviewed the full situation, including the voicemail impersonation, and permanently banned Jocelyn from event bookings at Bellamy's and the 2 other venues in his building portfolio. He also mentioned the situation to his network, casually, the way building owners mention things to each other over lunch. Jocelyn tried to book a venue for Caleb's actual birthday 2 months later. 3 places declined her. When you impersonate someone to change a reservation at a privately owned venue, the hospitality industry remembers. They have their own version of Trish. It's called Everyone. But the thing that surprised me, the thing I didn't see coming, was Phil's second phone call. Sober this time. Morning. Coffee voice. He said, "Nathan, your sister has been using your mother's credit card for 8 months. I found charges we never authorized. This restaurant bill is just the one we caught because it was big enough to flag. There are others." The birthday theft opened a door. Behind it was a hallway of charges, subscriptions, cash advances, small enough individually to miss, large enough collectively to matter. Jocelyn had been slowly draining our parents' finances. The rooftop wasn't the first theft. It was just the first one I could see. I told Phil to call his bank. I gave him the name of a financial advisor I trust. I didn't offer to fix it for him. He didn't ask me to. There are certain kindnesses I've stopped volunteering because I've learned that some people don't want your help, they want your labor, and the difference between those 2 things is the difference between a gift and a lease. Part of me wanted to call Jocelyn and tell her I knew everything. Part of me wanted to forget the whole thing and go back to being the brother who shows up and doesn't ask questions and is always, reliably, the person they call when something needs carrying. And a small part of me, the part one don't talk about, the part Dr. Keller would probably have a field day with if the fern were alive enough to witness it, wanted to hear my mother say, "I'm sorry," just once. Not to me. To Mila. To the girl who counted 4 chairs at a table set for 15 and didn't complain. Who held a napkin over her face in an elevator because she didn't want her father to see her cry on her birthday. That apology hasn't come. I don't think it will. And I've stopped setting a place for it at the table. Mila's drawing arrived 3 weeks after the birthday. School assignment. Draw your happiest memory. She drew the rooftop. Purple and silver decorations. Butterflies. String lights. A small figure holding a phone. That's me. Apparently, I hold my phone at a 45-degree angle, which I didn't know about myself until a 10-year-old drew it. And in the bottom corner, a tiny elevator with 2 people in it. A tall one and a small one. The small one is smiling. She labeled it in her 10-year-old handwriting. The elevator, when Daddy said we'd fix it. The worst moment of the night became her happiest memory. Because it was the moment she learned her father would fight for her. I put it on the fridge with the cactus magnet from New Mexico. The cactus magnet isn't strong enough. The drawing keeps sliding. I keep pushing it back up. 3 months later. Saturday. Nathan and Mila are at the same building. Different restaurant, ground floor, lunch. We walk past the elevator. Mila presses the button. Doors open. She steps in. Looks at the corner where she cried in June. Looks at me. She says, "This elevator's not so bad." I step in. Doors close. She reaches for my hand. She's 10 now. She doesn't hold my hand much anymore. She held it today. We ride to the lobby in silence. The elevator hums. The city is visible through the glass. She doesn't look at it. She looks at the floor numbers counting down. She let go when the doors opened. But she held it the whole way down. That was enough. Subscribe. More coming. Next one drops soon.